Hey everybody, welcome to Picking Winners Live. It's Greg Rand, thanks for being here, happy Friday. We get together every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, sending people off into the weekend, hopefully feeling pretty good about real estate investing, building wealth, dreaming big, being entrepreneurs. Real estate is an ultimate playground for entrepreneurs. People that do this asset class correctly have their mindset around the idea that you're talking about the product of actual pieces of the country, right? That's what you're buying. We like houses over buildings because houses are really tied directly to population growth. And so as long as the population's growing, things are good. My background is real estate investing for a long time with a lot of major clients in virtually every part of the country. So I have an interesting perspective. I also have access to a ton of data that we give away free. You're actually looking right now at the research center on renterswarehouse.com. That's the company that bought my company 6 months ago. Renters Warehouse is the biggest real estate investment services company in America. So we do online investment research, offline investment sales, and then property management forever. So if you're the kind of person that wants to build a portfolio of income producing, appreciating real estate over your lifetime, then we are your ideal partners in that, because we do all of it and we're the only ones who do. So it's pretty cool stuff. You're looking at a chart right now. I was just referencing the reason why we like houses is that they're tied inextricably to population growth, and therefore the value and the demands tend to go upward. And I know there are people who will see this and say, yeah, easy for you to say, except for the fact that we had a big housing crisis back in 2008. Well, let's point out 2008 was right here. You're looking at a 20-year chart here of the median price in America for a single-family home. And so this housing meltdown that we all talk about is on this chart right here. And then the recovery. So the boom and the bust and the recovery are all on this chart. And I promise you this, the more time passes, the more this is going to look like just a bump, just a little bit too high, a little bit too, come back down a little bit lower and then straighten out. This, I think, gives you a lot of perspective that the headlines about the housing meltdown, which really do drive a lot of people's belief system, like what goes up must come down, that's nonsense. It only went up and down one time in history on an overall. It actually does go up and down every year. Winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, summer. It's cheaper in the winter to buy, and it's more expensive in the spring into the summer. So point is this, data can tell you a lot, right? Like if you're on this podcast or this, whatever we call this thing right now, you just learned, number one, a visualization of the housing market over the last 20 years makes that volatility around 10 years ago look like something that's actually just a blip on the chart, a little high, a little low, back to where it wanted to go, right? Start in the beginning, pick up the trend line, carry it forward, we're right there. So the other thing you probably just learned is that seasonality actually matters. In the last couple of years, the median price was $198 in February, and it was $224 in June, and then it was back down to $207 in February and back up to $245 in June. That's called people in the springtime wanting to buy houses when the weather's nice and then get in before the school year starts. And then it's also called, Thanksgiving and the holidays and the cold. So seasonality is real. Point is, headlines on real estate are almost always completely the opposite of right. There's a bent in media to try to predict the housing market's going to bust because it did once since the Great Depression. So knowing better is actually a good idea. A lot of people kind of have a reaction to the content we put out. Actually, a lot of people have a reaction like, this is awesome, thank you. I'm a real estate enthusiast and I appreciate your content. But some people are like, oh, but the housing market goes up and down, and it doesn't. It just doesn't. Long term. I got a response like, well, sure, you have money and that's why you can invest in real estate. It's like, I didn't used to have money. I used to scrape together money. I used to work hard and save as much as I could and then buy property and let decades pass. So we did a piece called Have a Kid, Buy a Condo, which has been a philosophy that I've been espousing for a long time. And it's around this idea that when you have a kid and you have a long-term mindset, you might have been 6 months ago, I'll speak for myself, 6 months before we had our first kid, my biggest concern was whether or not I could walk home from whatever bar I was hanging out with that night. Then all of a sudden we had a kid, and then I cared about schools, I cared about crime, I cared about safety, and I cared about college, which I never cared about before. And so I had a baby. When she was 18, I needed to be able to have a college fund. I bought a piece of real estate, scraped it together, put the smallest down payment I can get away with to lock that property down, and then I sat on it and I matured the investment while I matured the kid. Now she's going to school in a year and a half, and I've got in that condo alone about $160,000 sitting there waiting for me to extract it. I got people on the comments saying, easy for you to say, well, I only had $15,000 to work with back 18 years ago. So this is definitely one of those things that if you want to make money in real estate, it's going to take money to get you started. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There's no get rich with no money down. You have to find a way to scrape together your first down payment, and then you get the snowball going, right? The reason why have a kid buy a condo is so powerful is that it automatically locks you into patient long-term, right? Nobody in their right mind goes into raising a child in an impatient fashion. They know this is a lifetime pursuit. So is a portfolio of real estate. So I like locking those two things in. Retirement planning is a lifetime pursuit for most people. I like locking that in with real estate investing because it gets your mindset straight, where you're thinking long-term, you're thinking patience. And I'll point out that right around here, let's see, my daughter is 17 now, so right around here, she was 7 when the housing meltdown was upon me. Did I think about selling my condo? No. Did I care what it was worth in 2008? No. I cared what it was going to be worth in 2020. And so I just rode through the housing crisis when so many people freaked out, so many people dumped their property at the worst possible time. I just rode right through. Why? Because my mindset was anchored on 2020, not 2008. Make sense? You guys will flag me when we have a question? We have a written one? Okay, let's let it rip.
I live in Staten Island and I've been looking to make my first investment. Problem is, the numbers just aren't working with the price of homes in my area. I have the ability to purchase one property all cash, and that would create positive cash flow. Should I go ahead with that plan, or should I try a different market? And if so, where?
So John in Staten Island said, if you didn't hear Austin, he had enough to buy his first place with cash. So he's saying the down payment is the problem, but he obviously has enough capital to buy a property with cash. What I would say is whatever property you could buy with cash, I'm assuming you'd like to stay in Staten Island if you can. I don't disagree with that at all. Staten Island is one of the 5 boroughs of New York. It is kind of the, I don't know, it's the disrespected borough of New York. I came from Rockland County, New York, which was the disrespected suburb of New York. So I know what it's like to be fiercely defensive of your borough, or in my case, suburb. People in Manhattan are so fancy they make fun of Staten Island, but you know the culture of Staten Island is real salt of the earth. And there happens to be a lot of 2-family houses and 3-family houses in Staten Island. So if you have enough money to buy a property with cash, what I'd be interested in knowing, and I wish you called in because it'd be fun to talk about this, I'd be interested in knowing, can you afford a 2-family house? And it sounded like you were young and so you need a place to live. And that kind of tips me into the whole conversation about what we've always called the snowball strategy. So let's talk about snowball strategy. Snowball strategy is you're a young guy, you want to be rich by the time 25 years passes, right? Figure it may happen sooner, but in real estate, it's like kind of a sure thing if you do it right. And part of doing it right is putting down a lot of money and down payments and then buying quality property and then holding on to it for a long time. So 25-year mindset. Did he give us an age, by the way? He's young, getting started?
Yeah, getting started.
I'm going to pretend you're 25, right? So by the time you're 50, which coincidentally is my age, and by the way, it goes by like that. So 25 years, you're my age, and you want to have places paid down, paid off, generating income. You only work because you want to. Snowball is like buy your first property, live in it. In the case of Staten Island, buy a 2 or 3 family, live in the crappiest of the 3 apartments. All right. So now you've got people paying you rent, but it's all inside the same building. So if you've got a 2-family, I'll stick with the 2-family. And you live in the lesser of the 2. I know Staten Island's got a lot of buildings that are upper half is like a 3-bedroom, lower piece is like a walk down with a 1-bedroom. Find one of those. Live in the 1-bedroom, rent out the 3-bedroom. You're not going to pay much of anything for your housing expense in that situation, or at least it's going to be heavily subsidized by the rent. And then you just live, right? Keep doing whatever you're doing to make that money that you have in the first place. Let that condo get paid down and down and down and down. When you feel like it, throw a couple extra dollars into principal to accelerate. You know, one of the things that's great, by the way, on this, because your goal is to roll the equity into the next property or just move out and repeat the process. Let's stick with that for a second. So you stay there, things are going great, you fall in love, you get married, now you're gonna have a kid, you wanna get out of the 1-bedroom, so you go buy another 2-family. This time live in the upper unit. the nicer 3-bedroom, rent out the lower unit. Now you've got 2 properties, maybe on the same block. You've got tenants in one, you've got you and a tenant in the other. So you own 2 properties, but you've got 3 incomes coming in. You're probably not paying anything for your own housing expense. That allows you to save money faster and pile up your next down payment. And the snowball continues to grow. Now, sometimes, like, I never recommend selling any property, but I do understand when somebody sees something they want to do, they want to go. Let's say you move to Florida and you want to start accumulating in Lee County, Fort Myers, Florida, right? So you sell the first property you had in Staten Island and you roll that equity tax deferred into the next property using a 1031 exchange. And you roll and you roll and you think of your original down payment as the beginning seed of a snowball. And picture the snowball. You're from Staten Island, it snows up there. You start with a snowball this big, you drop it and you start rolling it, right? And what happens? It starts to grow pretty quick. It doesn't take long. Like, you're halfway across your yard, and in Staten Island, the yards are what? 20 by 40, right? You're halfway across the 20 by 40 Staten Island front yard, and the thing is already 2 feet high because of the nature of the way this stuff compounds, right? That's the perfect way to start. If you have a down payment, begin that snowball and start rolling. All right, so I hope that works for you. My email address is grand@renterswarehouse.com. Feel free to shoot me a note and tell me how it's all going, and we'll keep going. And that actually reminds me, I had a note here to talk about my Uncle Richie, and this is perfect because he comes from Staten Island, and this is actually like your future, John, right? So Richie Rand, my dad's younger brother, awesome guy. He was a police officer in the 70s in the South Bronx, pretty dangerous place back then. He actually told me a story recently. He's in his 70s. He told me a story recently. He never told me this before about how during the riots back then, they had no radios. And so he was the only guy on the beat in this 2-block area. And so he shot his gun off and told everybody to behave themselves. And instead of killing them, they did. And it was all good. And then after like a couple of years, he got bored being a cop because he wanted more adventure. So he became a fireman. So Uncle Richie's got a little bit of a screw loose. But awesome dude, becomes a fireman in Staten Island. He was a lieutenant by the time he retired. So now he is retired and he's in Fort Myers, Florida. I happened to mention that before. He's in Fort Myers in a neighborhood where his neighbor across the street this way is a guy that owns like 30 diamond and jewelry stores. Very rich guy. His neighbor across the street was a trial lawyer, a guy whose name you might know, wealthy. Over here, doctor. Over here, business owner. The guy over here is the guy that invented the carts they have in airplanes that keep the food hot or cold. You ever see those things? They got built-in kitchens. This guy invented that. He's living over there. A block and a half away, Cliff Williams, the bassist for AC/DC. So my Uncle Richie is literally living in a neighborhood with rock stars, brain surgeons, trial lawyers, jewelry merchants, and inventors and business moguls. And there he is right in the middle. And how did a Staten Island fireman end up in that neighborhood? Answer, he bought real estate in Staten Island and Brooklyn. He bought multifamilies in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and he seasoned them over time. And then over time, you know, these guys retire in their 40s. And so he ended up being able to focus his energy on that all the way through. And now he's sitting pretty, living amongst people that you assume live in neighborhoods with lifestyles like that. And you assume that a fireman who went for the adventure and went for the life-saving, you know, whatever he gets out of saving people's lives, he was forsaking a comfortable retirement, and he got more than that. And he did it in Staten Island and Brooklyn. So, John, that's your future, bro. Do that. Buy and hold. All right, anything else?
Are there any resources or websites that I can zoom in with common search criteria like good school district, crime status, growth forecast, historical sale, etc.?
So this is a layup, yeah. So Stanley, we are, renterswarehouse.com has investor tools that you can use for free. And there's houses for sale that we have listed across the country. And there's research tools like you're looking at on the screen right now, where you can go in and put in whatever county you want. And I'm going to put in Duval County, which is Florida, just for the fun of it, because it popped into my mind. And what you're seeing in Duval now is the price appreciation chart over the last 20 years for the state and for the county and for the rest of the United States, and what the average appreciation rate is. And you can pop over here and look at population charts for that market, migration pattern charts, unemployment data, employment diversity. But here's the good part. Set your calendar for Independence Day, because right after the Independence Day weekend, we're going to be launching the next generation of our marketplace online, which is going to have 1 million properties for sale across the country and massive volumes of very expensive data all packed in. So you can not just do your research, you can be looking at active listings that are for sale right now on the multiple listing service, see rental and yield and ROI analytics, all the school and crime data you're talking about, not just have it displayed, but be able to actually search by it. So like literally, I want an ROI of 9% or better. I want the best schools, the best, lowest crime, and the best of everything. And you're going to find out that nothing shows up because you can't have the best of everything. You have to sacrifice something to get something else. So I want the best schools and the lowest crime. I'll take a 9% ROI, boom, or an 8.75. Or I want the highest yield. I'll go to some place with a little bit more crime because I want to get a higher yield. You'll have the ability to feed your intuition by simply searching properties, by adjusting market dials to see what markets actually meet your criteria, and then see the actual properties. And then if you want to go see them, you contact us, we show it to you, we sell it to you, and we manage it for you. So yeah, it's going to get really good in about 5 weeks. So stay tuned here with us because I'll be demoing it for you as soon as it goes live. All right, anything else right now?
I am looking to invest in my first multifamily out of state. Originally, I thought Indianapolis was a great city to invest in multifamily homes, but it seems that isn't it. I have heard of Jacksonville, Florida as a possible city. Any others? I'm looking for properties below 100K.
Okay, awesome. So you'll give me the county in a second on Indianapolis. Marion? Okay. I happen to be on Duval already, so this is serendipity today. I get a call from Staten Island, and I want to talk about Richie. Now I get a call about Duval County. I already had it up on the screen. So let me hit that one first. Jacksonville, Florida is a phenomenal investment market. What's been happening in Jacksonville is that it is not like Naples or Boca Raton or Palm Beach. It's not a bedroom community. It's a lot more like Charlotte or someday Atlanta. It's a major southern city. The average age is low 30s. The industry there is very, very diverse, but they've got something going on in Jacksonville. They're on the coast. They're on a river, so it's like a gorgeous place to live. It also happens to have very low prices. So multifamily is not my jam, single family is, but you can buy single family homes in Jacksonville for under 100 grand. So that price differential is going to translate to multifamily too. But here's the kicker. The Panama Canal expansion. I talk about this sometimes. The Panama Canal was built 100 years ago, and it allowed merchants and manufacturers from China and overseas in that part of the world to bring things and people through to the east coast of America through the Panama Canal. Instead of going all the way down around the southern tip of South America, they could go right in between North America and South America and get here. Get right up here. Let me put, never mind. The canal wasn't big enough, so the size of the ships was systematically being built bigger and bigger and bigger to where eventually the size of the ships that used to be able to go through the canal were about this big, and then the Panama Canal, the ships were this big, and then the ships became this big, like 5 times bigger. These were called post-Panamax ships. They were too big to get through the max of the Panama Canal. So they would land onshore in Long Beach, California, places like that, load everything onto trucks and trains, bring it east to get to the high density population centers in Boston, New York, DC, et cetera, right? Then in 2014, they unveiled the new Panama Canal. 100 years after the original building of it, they dug it deeper, dug it wider, so the big ships could get through. And what that did is that changed the shipping lanes, where it was now substantially cheaper to keep the stuff on the boats, don't land in California and offload them to more expensive forms of transport like trucks and trains, keep them on the boat, bring them all the way around through the canal, and drop them in Jacksonville and Tampa and New Orleans and Norfolk and Charleston. But every one of those cities went into high gear to raise capital, issue bonds, get approvals, get political support for digging the port, expanding the port. So when you want to do a $500 billion, whatever, I forget now how much money, I want to say $600 million Jacksonville put in to their port. You don't just get $600 million bucks. You have to raise it. You have to raise it by virtue of taking on debt, issuing bonds, the people in the community, there's always somebody who's going to say, terrible idea, you're going to bankrupt the state, don't do it. And so political battles ensue very often. In this case, the political battle was won by the people who wanted to dig the canal. So they raised the money, they dug the canal. Jacksonville has 3 naval bases in and around it and a massive shipping industry. And so what happens in the Navy is that you get transferred around, but you have some say-so on where you finish your career. And a lot of naval personnel wind up wanting to finish in Jacksonville because Jacksonville has a massive port industry to support their livelihood after they get out of the Navy. And so all of that translates to population growth in Jacksonville probably going up by 50% over a 10 or 15-year period. Population growth equals housing demand. And so this is really based on core population fundamentals. When you hear things like that, what it means is that houses are going to become more expensive. Rents are going to go up. Look at this chart over here. The green chart is Duval County. Okay, look at the pop that's happened in the end here. This is all part, this green line shows you the housing boom, which was harsh, which was steep, the housing bust, which was harsh, and then the recovery. And you can see that if you start in this green line and carry it all the way across, we're actually above it right now in Jacksonville, but I'm not concerned about that because that's all those things, those mega trends I'm talking about are now beginning to play out. So I think you're going to see where the national average is 3.5% appreciation, Duval County is 4.25%. I think you're going to see this get up over 5 for a period of years now, and maybe never look back because the prices are still fairly low. Average price is under 200 grand in Duval County. So Indianapolis, the major cities in Ohio, Kansas City, these are all places that did not see a big boom during the boom times, therefore didn't see a big bust, like no big party, no big hangover, but they tend to have a lower average sale price over time. I mean, a lower appreciation rate over time, but they also tend, therefore, to have a higher return on rent. We call that yield. So you rent the place out, you pay your expenses, what you have left is your yield. It tends to be higher because the cost of the property wasn't as high. All right? So here's one of the things I would say. If you're looking to buy property out of state or out of where you live, one of the things that you could consider is doing a little Indianapolis and a little Jacksonville and mixing it up. Right? Like we happen to actually have property management offices in both places. So you could actually have one point of contact for your property management. This is happening around the country right now where a lot of our biggest clients are starting to look at the idea of they want to get a certain return profile, but they really like the idea of playing some of these dynamic mega trends like Panama Canal, like shale fracking in Western Pennsylvania, like cannabis in Denver and other Colorado cities, like the coolness of Austin. These are all things that are happening around the country that sometimes give you a higher yield, other times give you a higher appreciation profile. But if you mix it up, if you go high appreciation in Jacksonville and high yield in Indianapolis, you blend to the middle, but you play 2 different sets of mega trends. And now because of companies like ours, you can actually be with one point of contact for your property management. So check us out, and if we could be helpful, we'd love to. All right, looking to wind this thing down in about 5. Got anybody else?
I'm young, early 30s, and I'm trying to make the next step with my rentals. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. Should I focus on paying down mortgage debt or focus on expansion? I own 3 townhouses.
All right, so he owns rental property. His question is, should he bang them down and pay the loans down, i.e. take the positive cash flow he's generating and instead of putting it in his pocket or using it to live, use it to pound his mortgage down? It all depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? So I happen to be uncharacteristic in real estate investing because I put large down payments down. I put down half. All right, and I'm going to get some people, oh, easy for you to say. It's like, I've been around a long time, all right? When you're my age, you should have some money set aside. I put down half and I buy fewer properties because I see a home, a rental home, as a money machine that I pull the cord, I start the engine running, and I set it aside to stop thinking about it, all right? And it just gets more valuable and generates more income as time goes by. I love the idea of paying mortgages down, so I don't know what your equity profile is right now, meaning do you have 20% equity? If so, keep paying it down. Do you have 40? Maybe that's enough, all right? And then roll that income into buying more properties. I think a minimum number, I'd have to say that I'd be most comfortable that if you have 35% equity, or call it a third, so 2 out of $3 in that property are debt, 1 out of 3 is equity. That I feel like is a minimum threshold. Push hard to get down to that level. And then if you're there, you can let the regular amortization of your mortgages kind of gradually bring it down from there and then move the income over. Of course, you could also liquidate the property and roll it into something else, but it sounded like he meant the income. So I like the thinking. Thank you for saying the kind words about the show. I love that people like you are paying attention to what we're doing here because it's super flattering, but also I know the advice I'm giving you is right. This is the way that you do real estate. There's so much noise out there. Like real estate investing advice is characterized by morons fanning out $100 bill stacks, pointing at a Lamborghini they probably rented for the commercial and talking about getting rich quick. And by the way, give me $10,000 for my ideas on how you can get rich quick. That's a good way to get poor quick, right? Those people are selling snake oil. It's the same as anything. Back in the day, it was snake oil. Drink this ointment and it'll cure your ills, right? Well, it was fake. The guy was gone before you finished the bottle. Now, real estate, cryptocurrency, these are all the new ways of getting rich quick. There's no such thing. So it's good that we live in an era right now where being patient is cool. Again, I throw a shout out to Vaynerchuk for that. Patience is cool. Long-term thinking is cool. We as a business can do real well if people like you decide you want to execute on this plan because we'll help you identify the markets, find the properties, buy the properties, and then we'll manage and lease the properties and maintain the properties for you. So to the extent that anybody who can hear my voice likes this idea, there's now a whole profession around real estate investment advisory. There's a whole technology set, brokerage set, and property management system. Like we're literally a property management company foundation with like piles driven into the rock. On top of that is a real estate brokerage company, real estate agents that are actually real estate investment advisors that can help you execute, not real estate agents of the traditional kind that want to sell you a home and don't have a clue about ROI, yield, any of those kind of market fundamentals. And so property management, real estate company, real estate portal. That's what's launching in a big way in about 5 weeks, which is going to change the whole game. So we are Zillow and we're RE/MAX all in one on top of a property management company. Nobody's going to be able to compete with that. And that's good for us. What's good for you is that now there's somebody you can plug into and get any of those services that you need a la carte or get it all bundled into one. And so we begin with just information and advice and education and hopefully inspiration. So we appreciate that you're here. All right. Any last questions? That's it? All right. Listen, have a great holiday weekend. I'll just leave you with this thought. Every Memorial Day, it sits in my mind that I can't shake it, nor would I want to, that perspective is so important in life, right? Everybody's got issues and problems, but being able to focus on what makes you happy and the things that you have to be thankful for and the people that care about you and the people that you care about, being able to turn your attention towards those things is the secret to happiness. And Memorial Day weekend, we're all going to be out, barbecuing and playing volleyball, whatever we're going to be doing with friends and family. But I want to make sure that I know I always do, I always remember, it always pops into my head, and I'm glad that it does, that there are other barbecues going on all around the country where there are people that are missing from the barbecue. People who died in the line of duty protecting all the rest of us. And so it's one of these bittersweet holidays that kind of get your mindset straight, that look at all that we have going so right. It didn't happen by accident. There are people that aren't with us anymore, and there are families that are trying to keep a positive attitude but are still living with that loss, and we should always keep that in our minds because that's some important stuff. All right? Have a great weekend. Have a great holiday. Thanks for watching. See you next time.